Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. Great to have you with us. The embattled first son, Hunter Biden, found guilty on 3 felony counts after just 3 hours of jury deliberation. Hunter faces 25 years for making false statements and a third count of illegal possession of a firearm. Truth, justice, and the American way prevailing in America at long last. Hunter now awaiting sentencing on the case as he heads to California in September for his tax fraud case. That ought to be a beauty, too. Not looking good for Hunter Biden. New video footage provided to House Republicans this week reveals Nancy Pelosi taking responsibility for January 6th getting out of control. The new footage comes from an HBO documentary that was videoed with Nancy Pelosi admitting the National Guard wasn't present because of her. Listen to this.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
And now, 3.5 years later, over $20 million spent on the sham January 6th committee, hundreds of J6 political prisoners still in the D.C. gulag, and a former POTUS charged. Pelosi is simply a disgrace to the country. Trump Mar-a-Lago documents judge Eileen Cannon this week rejected one of President Trump's motions to dismiss. Trump's team wasting no time submitting another appeal. The president's attorneys have now filed a motion to dismiss based on spoliation of evidence from Jack Smith's team. And our guest today is investigative journalist Julie Kelly. Julie has been covering all of President Trump's cases very diligently from the inception. No one out there does it any better than Julie. And now here is Julie Kelly. And Julie, I can't even begin to imagine how busy you are right now. You're reporting across such a broad spectrum of stories, everything from obviously the special counsel investigation and prosecution of President Trump. The list goes on. You're also reporting on, of course, January 6th and the hand of General Milley. And I'd like to get to that as well. But let's start right now with Hunter Biden just being found guilty. Your reaction?
Look, it seemed pretty evident that he was that he was guilty of these 3 felony charges. So he was convicted on all 3. But Lou, I want to caution everyone, and we can already see on social media this is happening, which is representations by corporate media reporters, and we'll hear this from Joe Biden and perhaps Merrick Garland as well, that these convictions are representative of a fair and equal system of justice, that it doesn't matter what your last name is, whether it's Trump or Biden, you're still held to the same rule of law and accountable. But we know that's not true, Lou, because Hunter Biden should be facing dozens of federal criminal charges, human trafficking, FARA violations, money laundering. The list goes on and on. This still represents a slap on the wrist where the Biden crime family is still covered up and protected by this Department of Justice.
Well, I think first that's well said, and a certainly a warning to everyone, and an admonishment to keep everything in proportion. And Julie's exactly correct. I mean, when you look at the Biden crime family, when you look at Hunter Biden's escapades, all he's accused of, and the protection that he's received over the past, now we're approaching 6 years of protection for this man. It really is outrageous. That said, a guilty verdict is in. and that would mean what, up to 25 years in prison. Give us a sense, if you would, where you think this will go, because we can't imagine that it goes straight to a prison somewhere for Hunter Biden.
No, and it's important to keep in mind, just like Donald Trump, Hunter Biden is protected as a U.S. Secret Service protectee, as a member of the first family.
Mhm.
So his incarceration, and of course, he faces far more years in prison than Donald Trump for his, rigged conviction in New York City. But this poses all sorts of problems because of Hunter Biden's status as a Secret Service protectee. So will they come back? Will the DOJ come back and ask for a few years in prison, home detention? It's hard to see what they are going to be able to ask for in Hunter Biden's case. Now, these are, of course, federal convictions,
Right.
where Donald Trump it is not. Those were state charges. I suspect that his sentencing will be scheduled sometime in August. It's usually a few months after a jury verdict, where the judge will set, the sentencing date, and then both sides will issue sentencing memos, recommendations, what they're looking for. But Lou, think about this. Hunter Biden could be in a Delaware courtroom in August facing prison time as his father is accepting his nomination to once again be the Democratic presidential candidate, because, of course, the DNC convention will be in Chicago towards the end of August. So interesting optics here. But the bottom line is, this is not representative of fair treatment of Donald Trump and his associates and the Biden family. This still, with all the criminal conduct of Hunter Biden, his father, his uncle, and others, this still represents a slap on the wrist for Hunter Biden and the entire Biden family.
And to your earlier point, which I think is very well taken, what do we do about the Secret Service protection? Do we put them in, do they get a suite inside a cell block in a federal prison? Well, what happens? And will there have to be, do you expect there would be a workaround of some kind so that Secret Service agents aren't put in that position?
I can't imagine that they are going to try to put Hunter Biden in some regular jail facility simply because of the Secret Service angle to that. And, that's a question that people have also asked in the conviction in Manhattan in the Alvin Bragg case. Now, of course, that it would be a stretch for the government, for Bragg's office to come back and ask for jail time on that offense, that conviction, because normally that's not the case, even though this was a concocted indictment to begin with. But this raises far more complications for the Secret Service, for really the judge, and certainly the DOJ, as to what Hunter Biden's punishment will be. Furthermore, recall, Lou, that Hunter Biden will also be on trial in California in September for other tax charges. So this is not the end, or even really, the midpoint of Hunter Biden's legal problems.
He has a lot of problems that are starting to build up here. And even though it may be a slap in the wrist, this looks like it has the potential to pile up on him. I don't know what the outcome will be, but if all of these charges begin to amass, it could get very complicated, not only for Hunter Biden, but for the entire crime family, if you will.
Well, in Lou, what kept striking me as I'm listening to the testimony, and this is testimony by his, sister-in-law, who was widowed when his brother Beau Biden died. They started having an affair. He got her hooked on drugs. Really just not just a tragic story, but just really low life behavior. And her testimony of him being hooked on drugs and, smoking crack like every 20 minutes. Lou, think of this. This is at the same time Hunter Biden, we were told, was a Burisma Energy board member getting $80,000 a month, as he is hooked on drugs, getting his widowed sister-in-law hooked on drugs, and exposing both of their children to his heavy drug use. And we're still supposed to believe he was a legitimate board member for Burisma, instead of course, protecting that company and using his influence and access to his father, VP, the vice president, and then, of course, candidate for president. So the idea that now Hunter Biden in any way, shape, or form was a legitimate lawyer, international advisor, he was running these companies on the up and up, he was a Burisma board member, that all has been shredded because there's no way he was not a functioning, thinking human being for years as they were collecting millions from these hostile regimes across the country.
A great point, Julie, and we expect nothing but great points from you, and we are never disappointed. We are talking with Julie Kelly. We're going to take a quick break, but before we go to this break, I want to tell you about a great sponsor of this podcast. This episode is sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. American retirees and those close to retirement can't seem to catch a break. Don't let bad policies and record inflation take away your lifetime of hard work. If you have an IRA, 401k, or another retirement account, you might take a look at Colonial Metals. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Dobbs. Colonial Metals Group was founded on the same principles as our great country. They help Americans take control and safeguard their future. Their team of experts specialize in protecting your retirement with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. By creating a self-directed IRA, you have direct access to your assets. You're not at the whim of the stock market or the current administration. Go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Dobbs for your free retirement protection kit, created specifically for our listeners and followers. That's colonialmetalsgroup.com/Dobbs or call 800-655-5323 to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver. We're talking with investigative reporter Julie Kelly. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
Back now, we're talking with Julie Kelly. And Julie, let's turn to your view, at least, of what is happening now with President Trump. Judge Cannon is making some rulings here. It looks like it's moving just from afar. It looks to me like it's moving in President Trump's favor. Give us your insight.
Well, Judge Cannon, and this is one reason why she is the target of the corporate media and the Democrats demanding her recusal, is because, as we've talked about, Lou, for months, she is really holding Jack Smith and his team, holding their feet to the fire, and as I have described it, sort of putting the DOJ and special counsel on a series of mini trials herself. Now, towards the end of this month, she is going to be holding hearings related to the potentially unlawful raid at Mar-a-Lago, which, as you know, I've been covering as well. Mm-hmm. She is going to hold a hearing about the motion to dismiss based on the unlawful appointment of special counsel Jack Smith, which Ed Meese and a few other former attorney generals have filed amicus briefs in that case explaining why Jack Smith never should have been appointed, that it's against the law, and that these indictments, both in Washington and in Southern Florida, should immediately be dismissed. So she's holding hearings on that towards the end of the month. I will be there covering them as well. But in the meantime, she is allowing the defense to file all sorts of motions and evidence. I posted on Tuesday morning another motion asking to dismiss based on Jack Smith's mishandling of evidence collected during the Mar-a-Lago raid. And there's a lot of interesting tidbits in there as to how the FBI executed that raid and mishandled evidence from the very beginning. And now apparently some evidence is even missing. So she is continuing this like death by a thousand cuts approach to Jack Smith's classified documents case. And she really deserves such praise because, this is the sort of thing that Congress really should have been doing. And she is single-handedly dismantling this case at great, I don't want to say risk, but she's certainly made herself a target by the left. And so this is why this case is really falling apart. And I expect we'll get even more bombshell revelations as these motions and hearings continue.
She truly has, as you say, she has been a remarkable power and presence on the bench in this case. And Jack Smith, his arrogance, his immaturity, his disrespect that he has let get way out of control, she has just calmly and firmly brought him to ground. I can't believe, as I watch his performance here, I can't believe that he was Merrick Garland's first choice to be a prosecutor. He was much ballyhooed by the left, but they would ballyhoo a prairie dog if they thought he would be helpful at all to their cause of this coup against President Trump. I marvel at how strong a presence she is from the bench. Your thoughts?
Well, she is. And as you know, I've covered this case since she was appointed as special master after the Mar-a-Lago raid. That was September of 2022. She basically said at that time, and this was before Jack Smith was appointed, but she basically said she did not trust the Department of Justice, that they had already mishandled evidence taken out of Mar-a-Lago. She is now exonerated because Jack Smith has admitted that so far. Yeah. And also said she did not trust the DOJ and FBI to conduct the post-raid investigation appropriately because there were already leaks being made to the media. She is exonerated in that, even though she was shamefully appealed by the 11th Circuit in her district there, that special master order was overturned. But she is now proven to be right. She has known from the beginning, Lou, how dirty this case is, how corrupt Jay Bratt is, the lead prosecutor, how sloppy this investigation has been and reckless. And, I think that part of this, not just revealing the corruptness of Jack Smith and DOJ, but a little bit of demonstrating that she was right from the beginning about how this whole investigation and prosecution went down.
And Smith's acknowledgement, as you point out, is important because it validates exactly what Judge Cannon had been saying. But importantly, too, it shows everybody else who he is. He made that acknowledgement in a filing on a late Friday, which is, of course, the refuge, I would say, of those who want to bury their acknowledgments and documents rather than have them actually be in front of the American public. He's now been shown for what he is. He hasn't helped himself at all. What do you think the prospects are here of something turning to the point that President Trump could have this thing completely dismissed by Judge Cannon?
Well, she still has a few motions to dismiss pending. One is on selective vindictive prosecution. And I really do think that is probably the strongest motion to dismiss, because I was in the courtroom 2 days after Robert Hur gave his congressional and public testimony about his investigation into Joe Biden's mishandling of classified documents, which included finding national defense information. But of course, he's not being charged. And Judge Cannon, during this hearing, routinely brought up and forcing the DOJ to admit that this was the first time that any president or vice president or any high-level official had been charged with this Espionage Act violation. Of course, Trump faces 32 counts of that in Jack Smith's indictment. She is very aware of the double standard here, and she is a stickler for the rules. I mean, when you talk about rule of law, she is a stickler for process, for accuracy, for fairness, for doing her job, protecting the rights of defendants, preventing government overreach. And so I think she is appalled by this case. So she could dismiss based on selective prosecution. In the meantime, though, as I said, she is going to, I think, drag this out, and she is going to expose all of this to the public as long as she possibly can.
Julie Kelly on the Espionage Act, which is, of course, the brainchild of Jack Smith. We're going to talk to her when we return here very quickly about which takes precedence here, the Presidential Records Act, the Espionage Act, and what is the importance of that distinction. We'll be right back with Julie Kelly. Stay with us.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back with Julie Kelly. And Julie, I just want to turn to the question I posed going into the break, and that is the Espionage Act. There are those I know who say that the Espionage Act is superseded by the Presidential Records Act, making much of this special counsel case, Jack Smith's case, moot. You're thinking?
Well, the Espionage Act those 32 counts relate to his allegedly taking these national defense information. So it doesn't look like she's going to be able to drop those counts, but it's going to be very hard for Jack Smith to prove that he unlawfully and willingly took those documents, whether he's entitled to them or not. And so that that's a very tough burden of proof for Jack Smith to try to reach.
All right. So let me turn to, if I may, this newly leaked video. It's been around for a while, apparently, but suddenly it's released to the public of Nancy Pelosi taking responsibility for the failure to bring in the National Guard on Capitol Hill on January 6th. Your reaction?
Right. So this is video that basically shows Nancy Pelosi admitting, as her daughter is filming, saying allegedly that she felt she was responsible for not securing the Capitol. But why are we just seeing this now more than 3.5 years later? And now Nancy Pelosi is doing all of these media hits trying to say that, she was doing her job and that, they couldn't reach the authorities who were responsible for deploying the National Guard. That's not true, because we now know that she was on the phone with Ryan McCarthy, the Army Secretary, who was the ultimate authority, who inexplicably delayed finally deploying the National Guard until after 5 o'clock. So still a lot of questions being raised, but why are we just now seeing this video? They know that the January 6th narrative is being completely dismantled and now backfiring as House Republicans and others are investigating not just really what happened on January 6th, but of course the January 6th committee itself, which we now know destroyed evidence, destroyed all the video evidence, and more importantly, put up a perjured witness testimony by Cassidy Hutchinson.
One last question, and that is Thomas Massie, Congressman of Kentucky, coming up with an idea that I think is terrific, which was that the way to save Steve Bannon and perhaps reduce the time spent in prison of Peter Navarro is to declare the January 6th committee illegitimate, which in point of fact, I think very few people would argue with on a technical basis, at least. Your thoughts about that as a way to end the nonsense and stop the pain that the Marxist Dems are trying to inflict on Republicans and America Firsters like Bannon and Navarro?
Well, it's unfortunate that both of the judges in that matter did not dismiss those counts. They both were well aware, and one is a Trump judge and one is an Obama judge. They both knew that this committee was not properly formed and that it violated the rules of the House and even its own enabling legislation. So it's unfortunate that both of those judges have allowed these cases to continue. But yes, I think it makes so much sense why they should drop those those contempt referrals against Bannon and Navarro. That's something that Representative Tom Massey has suggested. But, again, we're going to find out when we are finding a lot more about the malfeasance and corruption of that January 6th committee, which was, of course, formed by Nancy Pelosi.
Absolutely. We're talking with Julie Kelly, and thank you so much for being with us here today. There are 100 other things I'd love to talk to you about as well, and we'll take that up on your next visit if we may. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the very best. And Julie has some terrific reporting every day on her Substack. We recommend you check her out on Substack. Julie, thanks very much for being with us. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us here today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for the Great America Show, when our guest will be the former head of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan. And be sure to join us tonight for Lou Dobbs tonight, 7 Eastern, 6 Central on Frank Speech, Rumble, Roku, and X. Thanks, everybody. God bless you, and may God bless America.